Ladies and gentlemen, vi så Mr. Beast den anden dag, og der stødte vi på ham her, for han var med i hans video, og vi skal prøve at tjekke ham ud.
I'm about to plug in this fan to test whether blowing on this sail will move the boat forward. And then I'm flying 4,000 miles to the equator, where I'm actually standing in both the northern and southern hemispheres.
Og det er griner, han står lige ved ekvator, hvor ekvator skiller.
Because this line here is the equator, and I'm here to investigate whether or not this demo for tourists is actually a scam. Basically, they pour water in this basin, and on the north side of the equator,
Nå, er det sådan en rød linje, der er ekvator?
it seems to swirl and drain.
Så er det ligesom toilettet, så skyller de i hver sin retning, alt afhængig af hvilken side af ekvator man står på. Seriøst, er det så præcist?
Counterclockwise, but just a few feet away in the southern hemisphere, the water seems to drain in the
Det er sindssygt.
exact opposite direction. It's sort of like how you also might have heard toilets flush in opposite directions on different sides of the equator, and we're here to uncover the truth. But I'm not stopping there.
What? Det er sygt.
Because today we're going to investigate 6 other physics and engineering puzzles using simple demonstrations as we go. Because our goal by the end of this video is
Hvorfor bevæger hans taske sig ikke?
For you not
Det er en spacey video, det her.
just to know the right answers, but more importantly for you to understand why they're the right answers.
Elsker han bare står blandt heste.
To kick things off, speaking of hemispheres, did you know the moon in the sky looks like this in the northern hemisphere, like in Canada, but it looks like this in the southern hemisphere,
Bliver den ikke lige vendt på hovedet?
like in Australia? It's upside down!
Wow.
And while that is a fun fact, it's even more fun to understand why. And this is why.
så?
As we all know, the Earth is a sphere.
Ja, jeg ved godt, der er nogen af jer derude, som er meget sure over, at den ikke er flad, men kom nu med.
So if you were Superman standing at the North Pole in the northern hemisphere, you'd look like this.
Okay.
But if you were Thor standing in the southern hemisphere in Antarctica, you'd look like this. Now,
Okay.
of course, the moon over here orbits around the Earth like this. And I'm going to add an arrow to it to help us with
Er det sådan en rigtig folkeskolelærer?
orientation. And so to Superman at the North Pole, that arrow would
Ja, han ser det sådan der.
point up, but from the perspective of Thor at the South Pole, that arrow would point down from his perspective. And now
Okay, nu bliver det meget spacey.
I know what you're thinking. If all that's true, then which way
Ja, hvad så, hvis man står på
would the arrow
siderne?
point if you're Spider-Man standing
så
here at the equator?
til siden,
Well, according
eller
to
hvad?
our model here, it should be sideways. And sure enough, here in
High quality video, det her.
Ecuador at the equator, I'm happy to report that the moon does in fact appear
Når han står ved ekvator.
to be sideways. For fun fact 2 of 7, if you just stick 2 pins into some cardboard like this, and then connect them with a string and trace it out, you get my favorite geometric shape.
Han har simpelthen en favorit geometri form, så ved man, at han er nørd.
Ellipse. But there's something really special about these 2 pinholes. They're called the focus points, and any straight line you shoot out in any direction from one of the points will bounce
Det rammer den anden.
off the wall of the ellipse and always hit the other focus point. And here's proof, because I've got a laser pointer at one focus
Selvfølgelig skal han demonstrere det.
point, a ball of wax at the other, and a mirrored surface all along the interior wall. And now you
Vil laseren så altid ramme, eller
can
hvad?
see no matter which way I point the laser, it always bounces
Ja, det er sygt nok.
off and lights up the wax. But here's the really cool part. If you build an actual full-size room in the shape of an ellipse, and then you stand at one focus point, you can hear even the faintest whisper from anyone
Hvad?
standing at the other focus point, even hundreds of feet away,
Kan man høre, når de visker?
because all the sound waves bounce right back to your ears.
Ej, hvor sindssygt.
In fact, this actual ellipse-shaped room was built by John
Det er sygt, mand.
Quincy Adams in the U.S. Capitol building. And legend has it, he was a master at anticipating the moves of his opponents plotting against him on the opposite side of the large hall. And now that you know the physics involved, it should come as no surprise that John
Det var simpelthen, fordi han kunne høre dem, der bagtalte ham.
Quincy Adams conveniently placed his desk right on top of this leftmost focus point. Next up at number 3, everyone knows when you slam on the accelerator pedal in a car, the stuff inside slides backwards, and then when you slam on the brakes, the stuff inside just keeps moving forward. Including you, by the way, which is why we wear seatbelts. So then why
Det er sandt.
the heck, when I'm driving to the birthday party and I have to slam on the brakes, does the cake slide forward,
Wow, men ballonerne bagud.
but the balloons actually move
What?
backward?
What?
As for the cake sliding forward,
What?
well, that's just Newton's first law in action, which basically says all stuff is kind of lazy and wants to stay still unless a force comes in and tries to move things. And then Newton's second law tells us
Så da han greb kuglen, ja, så blev han selvfølgelig skubbet.
the more you weigh and the more mass you have, the more force is required to even
Nå, så bevæger det sig ikke.
Gets you to move. But here's the thing we sometimes forget. The
Fuck, han er sindssygt til sådan at illustrere det.
air around us is a fluid, and it also has mass. It weighs something. This is why air pressure is a thing. There's tons of air molecules stacked up above us, and they each weigh just a tiny bit.
So
we are like at
men det er der.
the bottom of this air molecule dog pile. This is why your chip bag expands when you head up to the mountains.
Når hvis man tager en pose chips med op i bjergene, så er den ved at springe.
It's because it's moved up the dog pile. Now there's less air above it, weighing down, pushing in on all sides.
Grineren.
And for a little proof, here's a simple demonstration that the air molecules around us do actually weigh something. When I throw this balloon at the side, it moves, but it doesn't quite knock it over. Now all I'm gonna do is take that exact same balloon and just
Ja, selvfølgelig så slår den jo hårdere, når han fylder mere luft i.
add air. That's it. Everything else is identical and unchanged. And yet
Ja, så slår den selvfølgelig hårdere.
now it bonks the sign over. So that means we increase the mass only by adding some extra air. Because again, Newton's second law
Det er bare sådan en rigtig laboratorium, han er inde i her.
states the heavier, the more massive a thing is, the better it is at bonking things over.
Bonking.
So in the car, when you slam on the brakes, it's not just the stuff in the back that has mass that wants to keep moving, but all that invisible air does too. So when I slam on the brakes, the air itself also sloshes forward. And since that air is more dense than
Når så skubber det ballonen
the
i
helium
den anden
gas in the
retning.
balloon, the lightweight balloon gets forced backwards.
Det er
And that's
sygt.
what we'd expect, right? We say a helium balloon floats in air, or this ping pong ball floats in water, but it's almost more like the heavier, more dense thing, in this case the water, rudely cuts to the front of the line, forcing the poor ping pong ball up and out of the way.
Altså, den er for sindssygt, den video her. Hold kæft. Han er også bare virkelig god til at forklare det.
In fact, you can see if we lay this jar on its side, the same thing happens as in the car. When I give the jar a push, the water sloshes back, which forces the less dense ping pong ball forward.
What?
And then when it stops, the dense heavy water sloshes forward, forcing the ping pong ball back. Then for number 4, we're back here on the lake to figure out if sailboats move by having wind blow in their sails. Why don't they just get a big old fan like this to power them through the water?
Okay, inden jeg har set videoen, prøv lige at lade mig vide det i kommentarfeltet. Kommer det her til at virke, ja eller nej? Ja eller nej? Lad mig høre det. Virker det? Ja eller nej? Jeg gætter på ja. Jeg tror, det virker. Hvad tror I? Skriv det i kommentarerne. I har 3 sekunder. 3, 2, 1. Og like lige videoen, når jeg er dernede og snuser rundt.
Water. Sort of like the guy in this viral video who's using a leaf blower, pointing into an umbrella to scoot his way around on a skateboard. Well, let's think this through with a simple
Jeg kan godt se dem.
demo of a fan that's attached to this train car. When I turn the fan on and it blows air to the right, which way will the car go?
Modsat retning.
Well, of course it goes to the left, because it's basically cutting through the air and pushing it backwards, which creates an equal and opposite reaction that pushes the train
Min hjerne har snart brug for en pause.
forward, just like an airplane propeller pushing air backwards moves the plane forward.
Yes.
It's no different than me standing on this skateboard, and when I push watermelons to the left, they push back on me, so I roll to the right.
Og det er faktisk griner nok, at... Hov.
Nay!
Er han okay?
Again! And so now let's place a brick here so this car can't move, and then add a second cart here with a sail. Now when I turn the fan on, which way will this cart move? Of course to the right, because all that fast-moving air
Det blæser den væk.
hits the sail. It's like it's being bonked by all those tiny little watermelons. So if we now remove the brick, and this cart wants to move to the left,
Bevæger de sig så begge to, til den ene til venstre, den anden til højre?
and then this one wants to move to the right, what'll happen when we connect them?
Ja, hvilken kraft overvinder så hvad? Ingenting.
Nothing! Because it's a perfectly tied tug-of-war, with each
Så det er en fuldstændig neutral, balanceret togtrækkeri ting.
cart trying to move in opposite directions with the same amount of force. A fan actually
Men er det ikke noget andet, når man er på vandet, eller hvad?
sort of does work to move a boat forward. You just have to lose the sail and point it the other way. But at that point, you might as well just take that same fan
Ja, så prop den ned i vandet.
and stick it underneath the boat, so you could much more effectively push against the heavy water instead of just air, which is of course exactly what a boat propeller does. And sure enough, when I plug it in real life,
Så det virker ikke.
as you can see, I don't go anywhere. So then if we've totally debunked the idea of blowing your own sail, then what about that guy with the leaf blower and umbrella on the skateboard? Well, I've copied his exact same setup here, and I can confirm it actually does work.
Det er grineren.
It just has nothing to do with the umbrella or the leaf blower,
Nå, det er ikke noget med det at gøre.
and everything to do with the fact that this is an electric skateboard
Hvad?
with the battery stored right under here, exactly the same as you can see in a bunch
Nej, så han snyder.
of these shots from his video. Now, before we get to the
Wow, så det passer slet ikke. Han har bare brugt et el-skateboard.
last three, including answering if this demo for tourists is a scam, if you're like me and you love that aha moment when
Ja, det var han var med i Mr. Beast video. Det er hele grunden til, at jeg ser ham.
you learn something new, well, I got great news for you.
Let me guess, Crunch Labs?
I'm glad you said it, Jimmy. That's right. Because packaging up that moment is why I created Crunch Labs, where you get a super fun toy every month in the mail that comes with a video where I teach you all the juicy physics that make the toy work.
Det griner nok. Han uddanner børnene. Det kan man jo ikke have på.
Mark won't say this
I stedet for at sælge chokolade, Mr. Beast.
himself, but obviously he used to work at NASA and Apple. He's one of the greatest engineers you can ever find. And he's specifically designing these boxes to teach you all the stuff he learned. He had
Det er meget sejt.
this water gun that we made, and you can flip a switch when you give it to someone else, and it shoots back at you. I mean, it's awesome.
I've pranked you a couple times with the boxes, Jimmy.
I know.
So if you want to prank Mr. Beast while experiencing a bunch of those lovely aha moments at the
Det er sgu da fedt, mand.
same time, just visit crunchlabs.com to learn more.
Det er en forretning, man kan stille sig bag. Ligesom din mor.
Now coming in at number 5 is the craziest fact I know. Imagine I just finished tying this rope all the way around the world.
Det er et langt ræb.
But now I just found out it was
Yeah?
supposed to be a foot off the ground the whole way around. So the question is, how much more extra rope would I need to buy to add
Så hvis han skal have det en fod over jorden, altså hvad der svarer sådan 30 cm over jorden, hvor meget ekstra ræb skal han så bruge?
to this rope to make that happen? Now you might be thinking double or even triple this amount.
Nej, det tænker jeg overhovedet ikke.
But what if I told you you only need this
Hvad? Skal man kun bruge så meget for at få det løftet?
much extra rope? 6.28 feet to be
Hvad? Hvordan?
exact. Think about that. The circumference of the Earth is 131 million
Hvad?
feet, and yet you only need this much extra rope to lift the whole thing a foot off the
Så hvis man løfter det en fod over jorden, skal man kun bruge det der stykke der?
ground all the way around. And
Hvad?
what's even crazier is if you did this around a basketball, it would be the exact same amount of
Når vi er en basketball, der er det samme, så det vil altid være det samme stykke, man skal bruge, eller hvad?
extra rope. Now the math is just some straightforward 8th grade algebra.
8. klasses algebra er, men det er for meget for mig.
And you can see here, because the
good.
radius cancels out, it
Oh,
doesn't
good.
matter what size circle you use. It always works out to 2 pi,
2 pi.
or about 6.28 feet of extra
Gud.
rope. But if math isn't your thing, don't worry. Because if you just pretend the Earth is a square, it will immediately be
Så jorden er firkantet.
obvious why the
Jorden er flad.
size of the object doesn't matter. So if this is my initial rope, when I raise it off the Earth by 1 foot, you can see in each corner, I only need
Ja.
2 extra feet. So 8 feet total. And just like with a basketball, you'd still get the same answer if you tried it on a smaller 4-sided shape like your TV. Which is pretty close to the 6.28 extra feet
Det giver ingen mening i min hjerne.
needed for a circle. And number 6, there was a
Det er simpelthen for sindssygt.
Kickstarter a while back that claimed to have invented a floating backpack that reduced impact forces by 86%.
Nå, så du kan løbe med den. Uden den sådan bouncer på din ryg.
Welcome to the future of backpacking.
Welcome to the future.
Never seen a backpack that moves
You've never seen a backpack like this.
like this, or that
Oh my goodness.
lets you move like this. And this
You've never seen it.
motion isn't just for show. By suspending the load, Hoverglide reduces
Det er faktisk ret sindssygt.
impact forces by 80 to 90%.
Det ser ret sindssygt ud, det der.
I really took an interest once I noticed a lot of people in the comment section were debating whether or not this would actually help. So what do you think? Is this a scam? The case for it not being a scam is that when you wear a normal backpack, as you bounce up and down, with each step you take,
Ja, den tynger dig.
you're working against gravity as you move that
Bouncer bare på din ryg.
entire weight up and down with you as well. Sort of like pulling this weight up and down with a stiff rope. But
Ja, lige nøjagtigt.
if the backpack was elastically suspended on a track, its own inertia would tend to keep it vertically in the same spot.
Okay, det er ret sejt.
So you could still bounce up and down while the pack wouldn't move.
Det ser helt sygt ud.
It would be like replacing that stiff rope with an elastic one. At which point you can see it makes it a lot easier on my arms moving up and down as the weight stays in place.
Ja, okay, cool.
But the naysayers pointed out all the pulleys, cords, and extra frames to make the system work
Nå, de måske er mega tunge.
is still an extra 4 pounds of weight.
Ja, det er jo 2 kilo.
And whether it's bouncing or not, you're still carrying 4 extra pounds to the top of the mount.
Ja, lige nøjagtigt, det er tungt.
Plus, the video just shows the ideal use cases, and in real life, it probably wouldn't work that smoothly hiking over rough terrain.
Nej, det kræver vel, du tager præcis de samme skridt hele tiden, eller de samme trappetrin. Men ja, her hvor det sådan er, så går det meget op, lidt op, meget ned og op. Man tager jo ikke altid det perfekte skridt.
And I felt like both sides sort of had valid arguments.
Ja, altså det er rigtigt. Man kan både tale for og imod, hvordan at det skulle virke. Så er det jo ret spændende, at han lige vælger at debunk det hele. Lad os se, om det virker eller ej.
So as a firm believer in the scientific method, I ordered one myself and then went hiking through a few miles with the normal backpack and then put the exact same amount of weight in the hoverglide backpack to qualitatively compare the difference.
Det ser helt sygt ud.
So far, I don't like it. Feels like it's like rocking me back. Which are
Altså, han kan godt mærke, det rykker i ham.
jogging. Oh, that feels good. That's kind of the trick, I feel like. If you hit the right cadence, it's
Ja, man skal have sådan den rette rytme.
magical. If it's not the right cadence, it's the opposite of magical. Oh yeah, now it's... And then it gets out of sync. Throws you literally off balance.
So my verdict is that on flat, predictable terrain, it can be beneficial. But on any sort of rough, sporadic hiking terrain,
Ja, det er jo lige nøjagtigt hiking, man skal bruge den til, så der vil den ikke være god.
it's just not worth the extra weight and force from out of sync issues.
And for our final
Man kan også bare se, hvordan det trækker ham ned der.
Weight and force from
Kan du se det skridt, han tager her, hvordan den bare sådan, hiver ham ned.
out of sync issues.
Han er alligevel vel bagover.
For our final science challenge, we're back here at the equator in Ecuador
Ja, det er rigtigt.
to see if this popular demonstration for tourists is actually a scam.
Det er fandme grineren.
Does the water really drain in opposite
Og er det så præcist, at på den ene side af linjen gør den det, og på den anden side er det den anden vej? Altså,
directions, even just a few feet on either side of the equator? And relatedly, do toilets also swirl in opposite directions in the northern versus southern hemisphere? Now for the toilets, let me just debunk that myth out of the gate.
Nå, er det en myte?
Because if you look closely, the swirl direction is just a function of which way the nozzles point. As you can see here,
Nå,
and with any toilet you inspect
what? Jeg troede sgu da det. Jeg har altid troet, det var ægte.
yourself. But what about sinks that have just a drain? Like in
Ja, hvad med en vask, hvor vandet bare kommer lige ned?
the demo here, where there are no nozzles. So believe it or not,
Hvor den ikke sprøjter vandet den ene eller den anden vej.
there's actually some truth to this idea because of something called the Coriolis effect.
Oh, yeah,
and it's
Coriolis
the same
effect.
reason you might have noticed weather patterns like this spinning counterclockwise in the northern
Orkansystemer, ja, det er jo rigtigt.
hemisphere, in
Det
which
ved man
case
jo.
we call them hurricanes, and clockwise in the southern hemisphere, in which
Cyclones.
case we call them cyclones. And the reason for this is pretty straightforward to understand. If you imagine you have a very big sink that
Stor
spans
vask.
from the equator
Det var en ret stor vask.
all the way up to the North Pole. In that case, a single drop of water in the sink at the equator here is going for a joyride really fast as the Earth spins. And a drop of water near the middle is moving at a medium speed. But a drop of water at the North Pole isn't moving at all because it's right on the axis. So now when you pull the plug on the sink and the water moves towards the middle, the drop here is suddenly moving laterally much faster than the slower water that was near the drain.
Ja, altså, er I med? Så langt så godt. Jeg synes godt nok, det bliver hissigt nu.
So it gets out in front of the drain. And conversely, a drop here at the North Pole is laterally moving much slower than the water near the drain, so it falls behind. So when all the drops are affected this way, you naturally get a counterclockwise swirl, just like a hurricane, where the eye of the hurricane is the low pressure zone like a drain. And
Wow, så der er rent faktisk det, man kalder orkanens øje, hvor der jo ikke rigtig er så meget tryk på, ikke?
of course, applying all this same logic to the southern hemisphere would naturally do the opposite, resulting in a clockwise swirl. So does this mean that sinks do in fact drain opposite in the northern and southern hemispheres? Well, sadly, no. Because the Coriolis effect is really only noticeable the greater distance you're moving up or down from the equator. So unless you have a 5-mile wide sink, or if you make the most perfect of perfect conditions like my friends Destin and Derek showed,
The water is flowing clockwise due to the Earth's rotation.
The water's going counterclockwise because I'm
Så det er ikke noget, der påvirker, medmindre man sådan kommer ud i enorm skala,
in the northern hemisphere.
eller har noget helt perfekt.
It's real.
this effect is way too small to have any meaningful impact on the swirl directions of sinks and toilets, at which point it comes down to other factors like sink geometry, or the fact that the seemingly still water was actually still barely moving around when the plug was pulled. So then what about that tourist demo? Well, if you play it back and look
Så hvad? Så de scammer rent faktisk folk her?
closely, you can see at the end of his pour, he does this subtle twisting motion.
Så han skubber lige lidt mere vand derover.
So the water would just continue to swirl in the direction of the twist. So when he finishes the pour here, he twists this way, and the water continues swirling that way. And then after moving the sink allegedly over the equator, he finishes his pour, twisting the opposite direction. And then the water swirls in that opposite direction.
What?
In fact, you can easily recreate this demo yourself at home to see that by copying this method, you can also easily get a whirlpool in both directions.
Så det er bare scam?
And therefore, it should come as no surprise that when I ask this question,
Does it work even like if I pour the water?
I was denied the opportunity to test and observe. On top of all that, as the final nail in the
Så det vidste han godt.
coffin, if you actually look up the GPS coordinates of this
Nå, så det er ikke engang ekvator.
place, it's more than a football field away from the official equator, which means we were actually in the southern hemisphere the whole time. So instead of actual science, this is just an attempt to take your money with nothing more than a lame magic trick.
Det er sygt.
Where the real magic is all that new juicy knowledge I just wirelessly transferred through that screen you're watching me on from my brain into yours.
Han er fandme nice ham her. Hold kæft,
It's a new year, which means it's a great time to invest in that passion for learning. Because that passion is not only the main driver
Han er virkelig grineren ham her.
for why I make these YouTube videos, but it's also why I created Crunch Labs, where we ship a really fun tour to your porch every month. And not only do you learn how to
Det er meget sejt det der, at man sådan får sendt noget, sådan noget legetøj, man rent faktisk kan lære af en gang om måneden. Crunchlab.com. Jeg ved, hvad det egentlig koster. More subscribe. $300 for et helt år. Så hvad er det? $600? Nej, det er sgu ikke per måned. Det er for et helt år, godt nok. 12 måneder koster $300. Okay. Så hvad er det? Lige over 2.000 kroner for et år. Og så får man en masse sjæve legetøj, som børn rent faktisk kan bruge til noget. Det er meget sejt. Det er virkelig cool. Det synes jeg virkelig er hæderligt. Mega sejt. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, tak fordi I set den her video. Skud ud, mand. Hold kæft, mand. Han er cool. Jeg tror også, vi skal se nogle flere af hans videoer. Jeg synes virkelig, det er sejt. Den er gang i her. The Final Glitter Bomb. Nå, det har jeg set nogle... jeg tror, jeg har set det på Instagram. Hvor der er en, der prøver at stjæle en bil. Er det ikke sådan?
These guys just broke into my car in San Francisco.
Ja, nemlig. Så kommer der til at springe sådan en bombe eller sådan et eller andet, når de bryder ind, eller hvad? Er det bare sådan noget fart spray?
And in the most perfect definition of instant karma ever, 2 minutes later, the dry heaving ensues.
Glitter and fart spray. Ej, hvor ulækkert. Det er bare fart spray.
Farewell to these two, without which
Kæft, han er en champ om der, mand. Tak fordi I set videoen. Husk at like.